Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Carrie Fisher, and I'm an alumni fellow at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. We are so excited that you were able to join us today for today's episode of Caregiver Community Connection, C3, presented by the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and powered by our partners and friends at Wounded Warrior Project. Today's C3 episode, Beyond the Handshake, is a collaboration with One-to-One Women Coaching Women. This topic was chosen from conversations with the caregiver community around ways to approach agreements and compromises. One-to-One is a nonprofit whose core mission is to provide pro bono coaching to women with financial barriers to that resource. Recently, One-to-One started two new programs. One is Life by Design, a multi-session workshop, and the other is Power Hour, which is a webinar very similar to what you get to experience tonight. But before we get started, I want to mention to all attendees that this session is recorded and will be available in the Guides tab in our Hidden Heroes caregiver community and on the Elizabeth Dole Foundation's C3 website. Today's moderators, Marianne Delatorre and Molly Lorensky, will be hanging out in the chat box. Out of respect for our presenters and for all of the other attendees, we kindly ask that you keep your chat comments related to today's topic. You may also submit any questions that you have using the Q&A box located in the Zoom control panel. We'll be taking note of all of the questions submitted throughout the seminar, and we'll have them answered during our live Q&A. We're also selecting 4 participants from today's episode for a special free prize. So to be entered in the drawing, engage with us in the chat box. Lastly, today's episode features closed captioning. If you prefer to disable that, please go to the live transcript button in the control panel, click Disable Auto Transcription, and you can do that at any time during the episode. And now I am so excited and pleased to introduce the two presenters from One-to-One Coaching, Don Lehman and Emily Kimbrough, who will be our facilitators tonight. Don Lehman is a trainer, facilitator, and coach who helps people and organizations to live in alignment with their ideals. Don is a longtime practitioner of both restorative justice and mindfulness, and she brings those foundations to her work with Awaken Pittsburgh and her business, Collective Change Partners. Don holds a BA in social work, an MA in conflict transformation, and 2 professional coaching certifications. She has been coaching with One-to-One since 2016. Our second presenter, Emily Kimbrough, has been coaching for One-to-One since 2017. In 2021, she joined One-to-One's leadership team, and she's now the Coach Services Director. In that role, she reviews new coach applications, interviews new coaches, and orients coaches to One-to-One. She also manages the coach newsletter and communications. Emily has a master's degree in organizational development and leadership. And I am so pleased to be able to bring 2 of these amazing coaches from One-to-One to the caregiver community. And I hope you'll enjoy the presentation that they bring. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Don and Emily.
Thanks, Carrie. Good evening, everyone. I'm Emily Kimbrough, and I wanted to share some background information on One-to-One Women Coaching Women with you. One-to-One was founded in 2004 by a professionally trained life coach named Susie Strauss. She wanted to provide free life coaching to all women, no matter if they could afford it or not. And now, 18 years later, we're stronger than ever. We've grown from just a few people at the start to now being a full 501c3 nonprofit with a formal board and leadership team and about 50 professional volunteer life coaches. We provide pro bono life coaching to eligible women who have stability of housing and basic necessities in their lives, who have been sober for 1 year, and who are ready and willing to make changes in their current challenging circumstances. Women can apply for one of 2 individual life coaching programs. The first is a 4-week pro bono introductory life coaching program, or a 26-session pro bono life coaching program. And we hope that all women who start with the 4-week program will want to continue with the full 26 sessions. There's a nominal administrative fee for processing the application and matching the client with a coach for the most successful coaching experience. In 2014, we expanded our individual coaching program to include women military caregivers who are often living in challenging situations on a daily basis. In 2020, we responded to the challenges of the COVID pandemic and now coach any woman emerging from a challenging situation, regardless of their ability to afford coaching. In the next year, we also want to include coaching services to the many women who have been part of the Legacy Caregivers program, who are now being reassessed and cut from the program, as their lives will face many new challenges. All our professionally trained life coaches donate their time, skills, and expertise to One-to-One. Our coaches create a safe and affirming coaching relationship in which individual dreams and desires can be turned into practical, realistic, and actionable life plans. In the last couple of years, we also launched 2 new services that are open to the public and all genders, and Carrie mentioned these briefly before. The first is Life by Design workshops, and this is a series of 4 90-minute sessions to explore a variety of life coaching tools and strategies in a small group setting of about 8 to 12 individuals. We also offer Power Hour webinars similar to what we're doing tonight, which focus on 1 or 2 useful tools from our essential skills portfolio that will strengthen your ability to move gracefully through the opportunities and challenges that you encounter in daily life. We continue to expand our life coaching services for our clients and provide professional development opportunities for our coaches. Our life coaching programs are transformative and far-reaching, rippling out from each woman we coach to her family, her community, our nation, and even the world at large. We believe we are truly changing the world, one woman at a time. Thank you for joining us tonight, and I'll turn it over to Dawn.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Emily. Welcome to everyone who is here this evening or watching on the recording. Thank you so much for taking this time out for yourself to be here and engage in this topic with us. And I want to invite you to arrive even more fully. If you feel like you're still transitioning into the space, I know some folks may need to be multitasking this evening. And I want to invite you as much as possible to let go of distraction, whatever that means for you. And for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to read a quote to you. So if you are able to settle into relative stillness, you're invited to close your eyes if that feels okay for you. Start to connect into your body, into just a space of rest and receptivity. And I'll offer these words and invite you to receive whatever speaks to you. This is a quote from a woman named Maya Birdsong from her book, How We Show Up. The American dream tells us that freedom is the state of being unburdened and unconstrained by others or systems. It's about having choices and being able to fully express them. It's having the power to be who we want, go where we want, and do what we want. But we tend to understand it as an individualistic concept. This is where we have to expand our understanding to fold in what is actually an older understanding of freedom. The origins of the word freedom come from the word beloved and meant joined to a tribe of free people by ties of kinship and rights of belonging. Freedom was the idea that together we can ensure that we all have the things we need: love, food, shelter, safety. The way I've come to understand it, freedom is both an individual and collective endeavor, a multi-layered process, not a static state of being. Being free is in part achieved through being connected. So you can let anything you care to hold on to absorb, let the rest go, and open your eyes and come back into this space as you're ready. This quote spoke to me for this evening because I know this is a group of people who have chosen relationship and connection. And it's from that place that we will segue into this topic of making and keeping agreements, which inherently honors our choice to be in dynamic relationship, both with ourselves and with each other. My hope is that we may find freedom in those relationships as we learn skills this evening that we can bring into those dynamics. So, as Emily mentioned, life coaching is about recognizing the challenges that we experience in life, recognizing where we have capacity and strength, where we're doing things well, and where we might need to make changes, where we might need to shift both how we're behaving and how we're relating to the circumstances of our lives. So, as we do this, we increase our self awareness, our clarity about the things that we want to do differently, and we often set goals that we work toward in that coaching relationship. And so, hand in hand with goals is often the idea of setting agreements or promises with ourselves. And of course, sometimes this relates to others, our family members, our colleagues, our friends. And so tonight we're going to be looking more in depth about how to give life to the agreements that we make. And sometimes this involves speaking them aloud to another person, sometimes writing them down. When someone witnesses our agreement, we are more likely to move into that. We're more likely to keep our words. So there can be accountability in a coaching relationship, but there can be accountability in all relationships. A person who has inspired many in our coaching practice is Dave Ellis, and he speaks a lot about agreements. As he says, we believe that your life at home and on the job works to the degree that you keep your agreements. So I'm sure we can all think of people who do not keep their agreements and the impact that has on us, the chaos that can be created when people are constantly changing their minds or not following through on things. And so we come into this honoring that maybe sometimes that's us, because the truth is it's challenging to change behaviors. And so we're looking this evening at how we can use the process of making an agreement to help clarify what's important to us, to really shape the vision of who and how we want to be and create a plan for accountability toward that so that we can be moving toward our goals. So, agreements are not made to make you do something you don't want to do. We all have pressures to do lots of things in life, and tonight we're focusing on agreements as reminders of what we are choosing, of what we deeply want to do more consistently. So we are looking at this as a skill that we can learn, that we can all deepen and practice together. So tonight we'll be sharing quite a bit with one another. So please, if you are able to chime in on the chat. I know some folks shared great scenarios and questions beforehand, so we will be working those in as we go along. We have a simple framework tonight, so we can move right into that. We have 6 steps for working on agreements. And I'm going to put those up here. If you're able to look at the screen, there they are, and I'm going to read them aloud also. So the first may seem obvious. It starts with identifying the agreement, identifying the change, the thing that you want to work on. And again, just acknowledging that most of us have a long list of things that we feel like we should do or we want to do. So this is not about putting this burden on ourselves of naming all those shoulds and setting unrealistic benchmarks. Identifying the agreement you want to make takes real discernment. It's really about looking at what's most important for you to invest in right now. Step 2, deciding on the language for your agreement. And the core offerings here are I agree, I promise, I commit. You may choose other words, but just noticing as you hear those that there's a different feel, and depending on the context, language can really make a difference. Step 3 is writing out your agreement. And again, this is part of the process of making it real, making it move from a thought that reoccurs in your mind to something tangible that you have a plan for. We'll look at the next 3 quickly, just listening as you hear these things, thinking about, do I do this? How does this sound? Step 4 is tracking your agreement. So again, some sort of system for making it real and checking in with it so it doesn't get lost. Step 5, managing any breakdowns. So respecting ourselves enough to name and acknowledge and regroup when things don't go as planned. And this is how life is. Things don't always go as planned. So we'll talk about that in more detail. Step 6, clean up any mess you created. So we are all human here, and we want to learn to be kind with ourselves in that reality and also step up to the responsibility when we've impacted others. So I want to just pause there. I want to pause there, let you take that in. I want to acknowledge that what we're going to be doing for much of this evening is going through those steps more closely and inviting you to relate those to an agreement that you would like to make. So if you are at a computer, you might want to open a blank document to type some thoughts, or if you have some paper nearby, a pen, we're going to be asking you to reflect on your own situation. So as you prepare for that, I also just want to ask if there's any reactions to these steps as you're taking it in. If you are at your computer, ooh, I already see a comment. Step 6 is such a good point. And accountability is important.
Yeah, I usually find that I derail when I'm not tracking the agreement. That step 4 is like such a vital, pivotal part to really making it stick in my experience.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody else is with you in forgetting step 4. Yeah, wonderful. So I hope folks are ready out there to start engaging this a little bit for yourself. So I want to invite you to take a moment to bring to mind a current agreement that you have or that you aspire to develop. Could be with yourself, it could be with another person. And so again, I'm noting like people may have lots of things, but this is really part of the reason we invite you to slow down a little bit and just see what comes up as most important for you. if one thing could shift for you during this call, what's something that would really have the most impact for you? Oh, yeah. Someone says they write commitments on the calendar and check mark when it's accomplished. Yeah. And that's been a method for a long time. It sounds like that works. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Having that place, it's reliable for you. You know to look there, and there's nothing as satisfying as a check mark. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I set smaller goals to make sure I'm tracking. Yeah. Yeah. So again, just we all know for ourselves what this looks like, but um, just again, whatever comes up for you, it could be in your personal life, social, professional, it could be something behavior change like exercising more or getting in shape. It could be one task like paying bills on time or calling a family member more frequently or spending more time with someone. Um, Really, no limit to this. It could be related to folks in your household, agreements around sharing household tasks or communication. Mm. So I just want to invite if anybody's ready and wants to share in the chat, or if Emily or Carrie want to share what's on your mind, just to start planting some seeds. What are some things that people are working with this evening?
Well, one of my agreements that I've really been working on is consistently doing activity, like working out or taking a walk. And I have really found it's important. I think someone mentioned writing it down in your calendar, just really making sure that I put that time in there for myself and block it off, because
Yeah.
that it's not a fun activity for me, but it's something I really want to do for myself.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. And I love that you're clear that it's something that's important to you. It's not going to happen naturally because you don't necessarily enjoy it, and you're willing to make it a priority because you know it's something you need.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're not alone in that. Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat.
Carrie, mine is similar too. I have a lot of agreements with myself around self-care, which I think a lot of people do. I also am working on my agreement with myself around education because I'm working on a course that's kind of self-paced. So it's, you know, making the time for sitting down and reading and focusing on that, even though it may not always be the thing that I want to do at any time, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to have a couple examples out here I'm seeing in the chat. I think mine is sleeping at least 7 hours per night. I quit coffee, so trying to keep energized. Yeah, getting the rest we need. And I also am really struck by one here in the chat. Realizing I make too many commitments. So let's acknowledge the reality of that also. I was thinking for myself, maybe an agreement I need to make is that I pause 24 hours before committing to anything new, before adding anything to my schedule or taking on a new endeavor, right? So if you're one of those people saying, I don't need to do more, I don't need to do more, then maybe there's some kind of commitment you can make with yourself around letting go of some things or doing less. Yeah. So if you haven't already written something down, I encourage you to do that and just write it down right now. You don't have to perfect it, just writing it down however you made it or however you're thinking it about it. And as we go through these steps, we'll just invite you to look at that and see if anything changes for you. So we'll look more closely at step one, identifying the agreement. And again, we're just really asking ourselves, why is this important to me? And if the answer is somebody else wants me to do it, or this is what a responsible person is supposed to do, like really check with ourselves on that. Is this what I want to do? If I check in with my body and my heart, is this actually what seems important to me? So that can require some discernment and just asking, am I willing to keep it as part of that? We already mentioned, Carrie gave that example of that ambivalence. I know this is good for me and I don't enjoy it. So that might come up as we go to make an agreement. Part of me wants to, part of me doesn't. So before you launch into this is what I'm going to do, like maybe it takes some time to listen to those parts of you that don't want to do it. Just enough to know what that resistance is about. Are you afraid that you're going to have to give up something else if you do this? Are you afraid you're going to discover something uncomfortable? Are you afraid it's going to cause conflict? Getting clear about what those concerns might be and seeing if you can come to a place of just understanding what that resistance is and listening to the deepest parts of yourself again, so that you're at a point where you're able to really make it a choice. It's always helpful to check in, is this challenging but realistic? And we're saying challenging because if it weren't challenging, you probably wouldn't need to go through this process. You'd already be doing it. So we're talking about stretching ourselves and also checking that we're not stretching ourselves too much. We don't want to set up ourselves for failure. If there's too much on your plate, maybe this isn't the time. Do your words clearly articulate what is expected? So again, this is just identifying what is the agreement, what is the thing that I want to get out of this, or that we want to get out of this if you're making an agreement with someone else. So if you're making an agreement with someone in your household to share responsibilities, when I cook, you clean, when you cook, I clean, just like getting clear about what's involved in those things. So you don't then get into the agreement and realize, well, I just thought cleaning meant I carry the things to the kitchen and then you do the rest. Or cooking for me means I pull things out of the refrigerator and then you figure out what to do with them. Like, you want to be clear about that. If you have an agreement with yourself, is it just, I'm going to be more fit? Well, what does that mean? Does that mean your eating, your exercise? So thinking through what's going to get you to the result that you want. Here's a really important question. What support do you need? So again, it's challenging for a reason. So asking that ahead of time. If I have a terrible time remembering things and I promise I'm going to start remembering things, well, what's going to change? I'm probably going to want to start some new strategies. I might want to buy that calendar or get a notebook that I carry around. I might want to have a accountability buddy that I check with, that I say things out loud with, that reminds me to look at my notebook. Whatever the case may be. Oh, I'm remembering we had some good examples folks wrote in about. Well, one of them had to do with remembering. Someone was saying that they would like their care recipient to clear social commitments with them. So first question I would want to ask is, what would help you to do this? Assuming it's something that they're agreeing to do and they're willing to do, what would help you? Would it help if we have a shared calendar that's on the dining room table? Would it help if we commit to having a conversation every time we have a meal together about what commitments are being made? So just really acknowledging something, there might be something new that we need to try. Yeah. Okay, things are coming in the chat faster than I can catch. So I'll make my final comment on this slide and then we'll pause. Does your agreement align with your current goals, behaviors you want to change, and problems you want to solve? So that's really just the catch-all question. If I actually do this, is it going to get me where I want to be? Will it move me toward the experience I want? Yeah, I'm seeing it as a caregiver. I've shelved too many of my commitments, right? Yeah, so acknowledging that, acknowledging what that brings up in terms of the hard choices of having to let some things go. And then maybe tonight is just a pause to say, what can I bring back in? What's important to me? Even if it's just one thing that this week I can really honor. And what would it look like to do that? Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Don, I really appreciate the comment about it being, articulating what exactly your agreement is. I think as a caregiver, before my husband's injuries, I could just say something simple like, I would really like you to take the garbage out. Well, now I have to be a little more specific. I would really like you to make sure you collect all the garbages in the house first. Then when that's done, the next agreement is, then I would like you to take it out to the garbage. And it's sort of like, it's the tracking that has to be really specific sometimes, especially when there's a TBI or a cognitive injury that makes it difficult for them. And it's learning to break that down instead of assuming that they know the whole entire piece of the agreement is sometimes really important.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's right. Remembering we're holding a lot of different things in the space, like how we frame an agreement for ourselves can be very different than how we're framing it for another person. And then each person is going to be different. So thinking about brain injuries, thinking about working with children, thinking about someone you've had conflict with in the past, like all of these are going to tailor how you shape your language and how you work with it. Yeah. I'm seeing this question, what if you're bad at asking for support? Yeah, let's just think about that one. I think support can come in a lot of different forms, right? So for me, one of the hardest times to ask for support is when I don't know what I need, but I'm stuck, right? Because there's like sort of this conditioning that says, well, I should know, and really I should be able to handle it myself. So it's already a problem when those things aren't true. And then I ask myself, how do I respond when people ask me for support? And of course, it's very different. Sometimes I'm at capacity and I don't know what to do. But if it's someone close to me and they say, I'm stuck, I might need support, usually that really opens my heart and connects me to them. And even if I don't know what to do, I can say, ooh, this is a tough one. Let's think it through. Right. And so yeah, when I'm needing support, sometimes it helps to remember that actually sometimes people really like to be in that role. Yeah, we all need each other sometimes. So remembering that. Does anyone want to share who hasn't already about what's coming up as you think about identifying your agreement? Okay, let's keep it going because if we want to get through all of these, I know some people said there's some juicy ones at the end. I want to make sure we get to those. So with language, just checking in for yourself when you hear, I choose, I agree, I promise, I commit. Yeah, that's interesting. I was emphasizing choose there because I think that's an option in and of itself. I agree, I promise, I commit, I choose to do something as opposed to I have to. So thinking about what works for you, and then again, using words that get a clear understanding of the expectations, the who, what, when, and again, just, yeah, whether it's for ourselves or another, that specificity can be really helpful. Ooh, timeline can fit into that specificity. So when are things going to happen? So especially if other things are dependent on it. Carrie talked about taking out the garbage. That needs to happen on a certain day. If I'm agreeing to pay the bills and my partner's agreeing to balance the checkbook, we want to make sure one of those happens before the other. Yeah. And finally, discussing consequences of not keeping agreements can be really important, like not waiting till it happens. So someone gave the example of it being really helpful for children in the household to do homework right after school, rather than putting it off all evening and having that linger. So that's one too, like we could think about support, what would help them to do that. If I sit down with you after school, would that help? How can we eliminate other distractions? But then also talking through, well, what happens when homework doesn't get done before dinner? And consequences can be natural, like here's what we all experience. It becomes stressful, it becomes distracting. We're not able to focus on other things. And then deciding, should we also impose a consequence? If that doesn't happen, does that mean we don't do certain things? Or if it does that mean we have certain rewards? So deciding how and if those things are useful can be important. Okay. Carrie, Emily, anything that's coming up for you on this as I look at the chat?
I really can't stress enough how important word choices are or have been to me when I make the agreements. If I hear myself saying, well, maybe I can fit that in, or I suppose I should do that, I'm creating such an obligation that I can tell I don't want to do just because of how I phrased it, where, like my whole working out thing. If I say I really should get to the gym, I really have to do this, it's not something I will commit to myself. But if I say I want to keep myself in shape so that I can take care of my wounded warrior, because for one thing, I'm probably going to be around longer than he is, and I need to be able to function in life after that. I need to take care of him while he's here. These are things I want to do. So I say things like, I'm committed to keeping myself in shape. I might not be in the best shape, but I'm committed to at least staying where I'm at. And maybe it'll get better. And what does that mean? That means I line up somebody to make sure that my husband's okay, and I make that a non-negotiable thing. It goes in my planner and I take care of it. But those commitments, especially with a wounded warrior at home, to write them down so that they can see those on a whiteboard or a notebook, someplace where there's a point of reference that they can become familiar with to look at, is so helpful.
And are you referring there to commitments that you make so they can support them, or commitments they make, or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like, this is where we look to know what's important. This is what we've chosen to prioritize. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. And that's leading us right into the next slide of writing it down. And again, like, this exponentially increases chances of success for practical reasons, like Carrie said. I mean, whether or not you have a brain injury, we all forget things. We all get distracted. We all get on autopilot. We all get pulled in directions that aren't our heartfelt intentions. And so writing down agreements are really important. It's an opportunity to clarify, as we're doing that we understand each other's role and what we're agreeing to. If children are involved, we're showing them the importance of this. We're teaching them a lesson here. And it's a visible reminder. So yeah, whether it's in the calendar, whether it's on the whiteboard, whether it's on the refrigerator, having that reminder is really important. There's also something that occurs to me with this one that I really like, an example that someone sent in, that in a work situation, the example was that a person was told that their work schedule would be flexible, but it wasn't in writing. And the handbook says work schedules aren't flexible. And so then there becomes this difference. And I think, particularly in professional situations, it can be really important to document things that are said verbally. And so you're not necessarily going to need to do a whole legal thing. You're not necessarily going to pin a note anywhere, especially if you're working virtually. I don't know where that is, but that's where you can simply send an email or some sort of written communication. Thank you so much for meeting me. I so appreciate the understanding we have, that my hours will be flexible. So now you have it in writing that you said that. And then you can, in that same email, pose a question to them that forces them to reply to you. So even if they're not saying, I agree to this, like they're replying to the email and you know you have that documentation. You can say, like, you can think about what they need too. You can also ask, so if I am going to flex my hours, is it helpful for you to know that in advance? Or do you need any documentation? What do you need from me, to ensure that this doesn't cause you any hardship? So you're looking out for their needs, but you're also like getting what you need in terms of having some documentation of it. Mhm. Yeah, I'm just looking at some comments. Anything folks want to add about writing it down? It can take all kinds of forms. Mhm. Yeah, okay, let's keep moving then. And I think I have an example here of something I wrote down once. I thought I might just throw it in to see if anyone has any reactions to. There you go, Emily. This is a commitment. I'm going to read it out loud in case anyone is not able to look at your screen right now, just to see if you have any reactions. This is something I did for myself. I wrote down from January 8th to February 29th, 2020, I, Dawn Lehman, commit to the following: eating foods free from excessive sugar or chemicals, 15 minutes of morning meditation before 7:30, daily calendar notations regarding these commitments, and weekly journaling regarding these commitments. I just brought this in as an example. I'm curious if anyone has any observations that may or may not be anything like the things you're working on. I just thought I'd share it because there's some things about that were very intentional for me.
Dawn, I really love how specific these things are. You're saying the amount of time for the 15 minutes. You're saying you want to do it before 7:30. You're mentioning that you want to do things on a daily or weekly basis. So it's not just kind of out there. It's really specific about what you want to do and what you want to get done, and not just broad. You're really narrowing it down. It's really helpful to see this.
Yeah, so for tracking it, then it's a real clear. I either did it or I didn't. Yeah. Mhm. I also have a really specific time frame. So there was a couple of things here, and you notice this was January. So often the beginning of the year, we're thinking about resolutions. And again, we have these high expectations. And I realized, well, if I just say, I should always eat healthier and I should meditate every day and I should do all these things for the rest of my life, that I was going to get daunted in a couple days. So I set a very specific time frame kind of to practice, to say like, this is my boot camp for the beginning of the year where I'm really going to push myself in this way. But if it feels like too much, I don't have to do this forever. I'm testing it out. Hmm. Okay. So writing it down. Also, I try to use lots of color. I try to make it visual. I want to enjoy it when I look at it. But yeah, go ahead, Emily. Let's move on. We do need to watch the timing. And so tracking it, you saw I had built in there that I was going to have a little checklist for myself. Folks have talked about putting things on their calendar. whatever that system is. Again, visual is really nice, but just knowing what it is. And it does say here, especially like if you're doing something like I'm going to add a positive behavior, then really focus on the successes. Give yourself a smiley face in your calendar when you do it. You don't have to do a frowny face every day you don't do it. Like you'll know when you look at the smiley faces that you didn't do it every day, but really, really rewarding yourself or affirming what you do well. And yeah, not getting caught in that. The tracking is the information. So we can move right on, I think, to 5. Okay, so managing the breakdowns. And so again, what's really important here is that we respect ourselves to say this agreement was important. So if it goes south, I'm not just going to ignore it and pretend it didn't happen. Oh, well, I tried. I'm going to revisit this was important and something is not working here. So it requires attention. We don't need to be weighed down by self-blame, embarrassment, guilt, shame. We don't need to be weighed down by anger, resentment, frustration with the other person. We just need to acknowledge, okay, this isn't going the way we planned. Let's name that out loud to one another and then figure out what we want to do. What's happening here? Do we need to renegotiate? Was this unrealistic? Did we not have the support we need? What have we learned about what additional support we might need? Is this a good idea, but it's not the right time? And we have to wait until some different circumstances change in our lives. So those are the things we want to be considering here. And we really want to look at this as this is feedback. It's not failure. We don't need to get caught in that, but just this is what's happening. And if there are people in your life who are consistently breaking agreements, and you feel like they have a choice to do otherwise, then maybe you need to set some boundaries and release some expectations for that. If you know they're trying and it's just not happening, then continuing the conversation about what is needed here. Mhm. So as we come to the end here, I think a theme that keeps coming up for me is that we want to respect the person, including ourselves, and still be really clear about naming the behaviors that are problematic, right? So sometimes we get a little, we have some bad role models for how we address breakdowns, and we think that people aren't going to hear us unless we shout or we're angry. So letting that go and just naming, we agreed this is what happened. And now I'm confused, I'm disappointed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm whatever, naming what that is for you so that it can be understood. And finally, then cleaning up any messes. So again, we might be the one who didn't follow through or who forgot something really important. Or who took on more than we could handle, or just had a day where we just weren't feeling it and didn't do the thing we said we would do. And so, regardless of whether it was in our control or not, if we didn't do something, then the agreement was broken. So, a good excuse doesn't change the fact that that other person was impacted. And so we really want to honor that and apologize and hear what it is that they need. So we don't want to assume, right? Because people are affected very differently by broken agreements. Some people won't be fazed and some people will be deeply hurt. So we want to listen carefully and ask what we can do to improve the situation. So there you go. I feel like I ended up talking a lot, and I'm glad we have space for questions. That's what we really want to open it up to for the folks in the audience and caregivers who are participating here. I'm going to look at some questions that came into us today, see if we can work these in too, but really want you to be looking at your own agreement and noticing what was helpful here, what's challenging, and what can we discuss that might support you.
Yeah, Don, here was a great question is, I'm really good at voicing disappointments when an agreement is not upheld, like to my husband, kids, family members, but they get very defensive. What's a better way of navigating that when you're disappointed when somebody breaks an agreement with you?
Yeah. Oh, that is such a good question. And I think it requires perhaps some sensitivity and sort of navigating the individual situation. So I want to be careful what I say because I don't know this individual situation. But what I'm curious about when people get defensive is what are they reacting to? Would they get defensive if somebody else said the same thing? Or is it a reaction to you? Is it that they know they did wrong and they're already judging themselves, and so they would be defensive because of that?
Mhm. I
Yeah,
know when
what's
I had
going
kids
on there? Go
when I
ahead.
had kids at home still, and that would happen, a lot of
Uh-huh.
times it came back to not being really clear on the agreement to start
Yeah,
with. And once it could get to a cooler place, it really helped to be for them to understand things like, if this doesn't get done, it all falls on me.
yeah,
So if the family member, and now with them growing up, it's like other family members, if I'm counting on them to help out with something and they don't do it, instead of getting angry about it, I try to explain to them that if you don't do that, I still have to get it done. It doesn't, that
yeah.
whatever I asked you for help for doesn't go away. And
There we
so
go.
it's easier for me if you just tell me you can't do it. So clarifying that agreement with them and
Yeah.
kind of working back to step one and seeing if we made the agreement in a way that was clear to everybody.
Yeah, that's really good. And at the end of the day, what I really like about this person is like recognizing I'm communicating effectively. I'm just saying I'm disappointed, right? And that's so real, that's so authentic, that's not blaming. And so it's like it's a great place to start. And sometimes people are going to react negatively even when we communicate effectively. So what often comes up for me in that situation is then, okay, I think I'm speaking effectively, but how do I need to listen now? What do I need to understand about why they're reacting that way? And so sometimes that means just even before explaining what you did, Carrie, which was right on, is to say, what's going on for you around this? I noticed this didn't happen. Do you have any thoughts about it? And if they start in with like self blame, then you realize, oh, yeah, they're defensive because they already feel bad and I don't need to say anything else. If they dismiss it, then that's where you might want to say, okay, it sounds like it wasn't really important to you. Can we talk about how it affects me and all the things that you said? So really understanding
Yeah.
what's going on around that. And I think at some point, if they're open to it, just really normalizing like defensiveness, like, oh, you might not want to hear this. And we still need to talk about it. Kind of preparing for, I know this isn't maybe going to be your favorite conversation, and I really care about you and I respect you enough to want to be able to engage you in things that are important to me.
Yeah.
So it can be really, I know you've been working really hard and you've been doing all these great things, and this one is still important. Mhm.
That's great. We're kind of we have a few more questions out there, and I think I just want to say thank you, Don and Emily, for such an informative presentation. There's so much information always in these, and it's hard to know if you had enough time to get through it all, and there's always some questions unasked. So I do want to thank everyone for the questions that were submitted, and we've taken notes of all the questions we received. So if we didn't get to one of the questions live, we're going to be sure that we do reach out with a response and go over a couple of questions that might still be hanging out there. But Don and Emily, I just want to thank you so much for the presentation, for the time that you put into this, and for donating your valuable time for our caregivers. And I hope that everybody had a chance to learn something new tonight, or something that might help them make good agreements going forward with themselves and with others in their life. Let's see. And before we wrap up, I just want a reminder that we have some winners for our giveaway, I believe, and I'll have those names soon. Marianne, I think, is collecting those up, and we'll be sending out that. We'll give you a mailing address when we have those, so that an email address, so you can get us our mailing address on that. But we're so grateful for this wonderful knowledge and for all the information that one-to-one can give to our caregiver community. Our winners tonight are, and we have three. We must have 3 active people on the site tonight: Barb Webb, Wendy Gavel, and Sharon Grassi. Thank you so much for taking part in this and for the great questions that you gave. And if you could just email events@elizabethdolefoundation.org with a good mailing address, those prizes will be sent out to you right away. If you're not already, for all the attendees here, if you're not already registered with HHCC, I encourage you to join the Facebook group for any updates. The group is an inclusive community for military and veteran caregivers of all service areas. So if you care for wounded, ill, or injured service member or veteran, we'd love to have you come and join the community. Visit hiddenheroes.org/register to get started. Elizabeth Dole Foundation has also launched the Hope Fund for critical financial assistance. So if you need financial help, you can learn more and apply for grants at hiddenheroes.org/Hope Fund. And lastly, be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Elizabeth Dole Foundation that will include the recording of today's episode, one-to-one coaching resources and information, and a link to register with Hidden Heroes. And before we close up tonight, I just want to invite Dawn back for one quick closing comment that she has for us.
All right. Mostly, I think I'll just end by thanking everyone for your participation tonight. Invite you to continue to working with the goal that you started on tonight, and to continue this process, and just know that we are confident that this is a skill that you can learn and get better at. And we have such deep respect for the things that you are dealing with and as caregivers. And so thank you so much for inviting us to be here.
Yes. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a pleasure for me to bring together 2 parts of my life that are really important to me: one-to-one coaching and the caregiver community. And if there's ever anything or any questions anyone has, I'm happy to answer them. And I especially want to give a big thanks to EDF partners at Wounded Warrior Project for supporting the C3 series for both this seminar and other sessions that we have had and will have in the future. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.